Okay, April 19th. We're still factoring. Da, 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 da. Okay, so we're still factoring out a greatest common factor. But the difference here is we're also going to have to factor out a variable. See, like you'll notice there's a p in both of these terms. So the p can also be factored out as well. So just like last week, you have coefficients of 14 and 7. So the greatest common factor of 14 and 7, right? You got to think what numbers go into both of those. So I always start with the smallest. What are numbers that go into 7? Well, 1 and 7. And then you start big and work your way down. Does 7 go into 14? Yes. So that is the greatest common factor. But also there is a p in both of these terms. So the p gets pulled out as well. So your greatest common factor is now 7p. And now we have to figure out, okay, 7p times what? Times what is going to be 14p to the third. Well, 7 times 2 is 14, so that was right there. And then p to the first times p to the what is p to the third, right? We have 1. We need how many more to get to 3? 2. So it becomes p to the second, right? Because p to the first times p to the second gives me that p to the third I'm looking for. Then the second part, 7p times what is 7p? Well, anything times, like how do you get itself? It's just by using a 1. So 7p times 1 brings us back to that 7p. So it's the same thing that we were doing last week, except this time, when you have the variable in both of those terms, you need to pull that variable as well because it's part of the greatest common factor. Okay, greatest common factor of 4 and 20. So you want to ask yourself, start with the smaller number. What are factors of 4? 1, 2, and 4. So let's start with the biggest. Does 4 go into 20 also? You bet it does. So 4 is the greatest common factor of those coefficients. And since there's an x in both terms, the x comes out as well. So 4 times what is 4? Well, 4 times 1 is 4. We don't really need to write ones, though. We can. And then x to the first times what is x to the fourth? Well, you have 1. You need 1, 2, 3 more to get to the 4, right? So you're more or less subtracting, right? Because x to the first times x to the third brings me back here. And then 4x times what is 20x? Well, it's positive. Okay, and 4 times what is 20? Another way to approach that is 20 divided by 4. Fact families, right, is 5. And then x, we already have it. 4x times 5 brings me to 20x. So I don't need to have any other x's over here because it's already represented. But let's clean this up a little bit. Your final answer should look like this. Because we don't really write ones. Okay. 36 and 42. So numbers that go into 36, 1 does, 2, 3 does, 4 does, 5 does not, 6 does, exactly 6 times. 7 doesn't, 8, 9, 10 does not, 11 does not, 12 does, and that would be it. Okay, so starting with the biggest number, does 36 go into 42? No. Does 12? No. Does 9? No. Does 6 go into 42? Yes, it does. All right, so that means 6 is the greatest common factor of those coefficients. And since both terms have an x needs to get pulled out. Okay, 6 times what is 36? Another way to ask that is 36 divided by 6 is? And the answer would be 6. Okay, x to the first times what is x to the second? Well, x times x is x to the second. All right, and then we got a positive going on. 6 times what is 42? 7. And we don't want to include another x because it's already represented here, right? 6x times 7 is 42x. All right, greatest common factor of 10 and 80. Well, starting with the 10 because it's smaller. We know 1 goes into 10, 2, 5, 10, and that's it. So starting big, what goes into 80? Does 10 go into 80? Yes. So 10 would be our greatest common factor, and we also pull an A because A is represented in both parts. So 10 times what is negative 10? Well, negative 1. And then A times what is A to the second? A times A is A to the second. Okay, cool. And then there's this plus sign, so we know it's a plus. 10 times what is 80? Or really 80 divided by 10 is 8. And A times A, 10A times 8 brings us back here. So we don't really write 1, so let's clean it up. Oops, that's an A. So negative A plus 8. So 10A times negative A plus 8.